frustrating to see Democrats have no problem getting their agenda done. A constant march of leftist ideas, while the right can't do anything even when we have the power. Welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, your favorite candidate for Kentucky State Treasurer. And I'm just coming at you with another amazing episode. For those of you who noticed, last week we did not have an episode as it was Thanksgiving and also deer season. And also, I just wanted a week off, I'm going to be honest with you. It's a shorter work week and I want to spend some time with my family, but we're getting back into it as we are going into the 2023 campaign season and the 2023 legislative session. In today's episode, we're going to focus on, well, frankly, we're going to focus on a troubling trend. What perplexes me, what vexes me right now about the state of the Republican Party. I'm going to focus on Kentucky, but this is a problem we're having nationally. I know this. And what I mean by that is where the frustration is and where I think some of us feel a sense of some hopelessness with our government as a whole. But before we dive into that, please go over to c4ky.com. That's C, the number 4ky.com, and support your favorite candidate for Kentucky State Treasurer, Andrew Cooperrider. Donate to the campaign there. Spread that around to others, asking them to help out. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, share, whatever you need to do to get this podcast out there. For those of you watching in the video form, you can take it with you and listen to the audio only on all major podcasting platforms. Additionally, as well, you can watch it on YouTube and Facebook and all those places where there is video. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember to share, and let's dig into it. So recently, and I've been talking to some of my friends. You know, I've been heading out. Like I said, it's been deer season, you know, so I've been getting out into the woods every day. One, sitting alone with your thoughts, and then two, also as well, of course, there's about an hour and 15-minute drive to where I hunt at. And so me and my hunting buddy have been driving out there and have been talking a lot too as well about just the general state of things and the frustrations. Because when you get, when we sit and you start talking to somebody, and you know, my hunting buddy, he's politically aware, but he's not really politically involved. And so, you know, we start to talk about some of the things we have going on in the political field. And we start at the big picture things and talk about some of the issues we see time and time again. And, you know, it's very frustrating when you're talking to somebody new and you're explaining some of the things that have happened, whether that's a Hunter Biden laptop story, whether it is people lying to Trump during his administration about troop placements in order to mislead the commander in chief so he wouldn't have ultimate control over the troops as he is supposed to. Whether that is, you know, a plethora of issues or of course, you know, things like Andy Bashir locking up people, taking away their ability to go to church, things like that. And of course, then it turns to just in general, the whole pandemic talking about all the lies we've been told and everything else. And it gets really frustrating because it's about the fact that nothing happens to these people. I mean, just look at things like the manufacturers having lied about its ability. And you know, the thing I'm talking about there. I can't say the word because it still elicits a response on Facebook and YouTube to put disclaimers. But, you know, they come out and they admit that they lied to all of us. And not only that, their lie about the efficacy of slowing the spread caused people, I mean, that was the reasoning behind people getting fired. That was the reasoning behind people losing their jobs. That was the reasoning behind all of that. And yet, they will not be held to account for it. They never will. Or at least I find it very hard to believe that. And so we begin to talk about that. And of course, you know, the question always comes up, what do we do about it? What do we do? Right? Or why is this happening? Okay. The cavalier nature. And the first thing you have to understand, anybody who rolls around these political circles like I unfortunately have to, realizes very quickly to a lot of these people, it is a game. It is a game. They don't actually care. They just happened, through happenstance, they ended up in the Republican camp. They're not actually conservatives. They're just about putting more of their team in office than the other team. They don't know why. A lot of these people happened into it. That's part of it. But it doesn't as much go into the political side. So first understand this, political operatives, okay? So the first problem you have of why these people are never held to account, if I have to be honest, is because the voters as a whole, in general, are bought off with 30-second ads, mailers, and things like that. The general voter, and we've talked about this before, the normalized voter, they're too busy and to do the research. It's too hard to do the research. And so they will lead to individuals being able to get away with whatever they want. And a perfect example of this, most recently, there was a Republican member of our state legislature that was literally celebrating the fact that they were awarded a special award or something from a left of center educational group that pushes things like CRT. And they were celebrating it. It was shared out there. They're like, look at me. Look what I accomplished. Not even realizing that that's not the kind of thing. If you're actually being held to account and by conservative voters, or if you're actually conservative and cared a whole lot about that issue, then you'd stand again. You wouldn't ever join that. But why is it? Why is it that they stand there and they don't actually care? Now, part of it is because they're not going to be held to account by voters, but why don't they personally care? Right? And I actually, there's this interesting opportunity where we got, as a group, a good look into how some of these people think. And the best example I have to give you, recently, Adam Koenig, Representative Koenig, wrote, was quoted in an article done by the Cincinnati Enquirer. And for those of you who are unaware, Adam Koenig ran against Steve Doan, or Steve Doan ran against him in the primary in Northern Kentucky. And Steve Doan won. He beat Adam by quite a bit, like 66, 33%. And Adam was hopping mad. He's hopping mad about this because he is a incumbent. He says, I do all this work. I'm the chair of these committees. I'm seniority. I'm all these things. And two other incumbents lost too. And he says, well, I'm all these things and I lost. And so suddenly he has decided it's because the voter is too dumb, too stupid. Now, of course, this hasn't stopped him in the past. See, as we're about to go about, the very things he complains about, he preys on people over. I'll give you an example. So this gives us a look. So this is a Republican legislator. He was in office, I believe, for like 8 years, who is upset that he was elected out by the people, that the people chose somebody else. And he is upset about this. And this tells you so much. This guy was in leadership. He was considered an influential Republican figure. So this shows you how these people think. And they think we're all idiots. Let me read what he says. So he's talking about his opponent, Steve Doan, who's labeled as a liberty Republican. This is what he says. He says, there's nothing liberty about these people. These people want to ban books, control a woman's ability to determine when they get pregnant. You can debate all the abortion stuff, but in the end, they don't even want you to take birth controls because they believe that's an abortion. That's extreme. Anybody who thinks everything should be exactly their way is, in my opinion, extremist. Now, first off, Adam, you're an idiot. Okay? And I'm going to tell you're an idiot for this reason. Anybody who thinks everything should be exactly their way is, in my opinion, an extremist. Do you, Adam, not believe that everything should be your way? I mean, you're the fact that you ignored the base of the Republicans so much, and the fact that you stood and flew in their face is exactly why you were voted out. You believe everything should be your way. But because somebody disagrees with you, they're now the extremist. But let's toss that aside. Let's break this down. These people want to ban books. Ban books. And this is what's so betraying. See, this is why when you sit there as a conservative, as a real conservative, and you see these talking books like the BLM, the CRT, the racial inequity, when you sit there and you see that the diversity, equity, and inclusion buzzwords, these lefty buzzwords are catching on. When you watch NHL, National Hockey League, go woke, and you're like, why is this happening? It is because you have people like Adam that believe it. See, he knew that he couldn't come out and say he was against those things when he is elected, but now he's not. And now he can say how he actually feels. And it tells us why nothing was getting done. These people want to ban books. What is he talking about there? He's talking about this leftist talking point. That if you say, look, we don't want books like this book is gay and genderqueer in our public school libraries, or maybe even in our public libraries. We don't want our tax dollars that is taken from us by force to go towards pushing forward agendas and liberal ideologies that we disagree with. You're spending our tax dollars on it, so we have an issue with it. If you're taking my money and spending it on something, do we not get representation on that issue? When you decide to be funded by the taxpayer, you are now to the will of the taxpayer. Libraries, public libraries in public schools and out in the public areas, they are accountable to the voters, or should be. They're accountable to the people they're taking their money from. And if those people don't want their money spent on that, then they get that choice. Banning books, nobody is trying to create a law saying that you can't print up the book Genderqueer and sell it. There is no call from anybody to even boycott Amazon for selling the book. I don't see it. If it's out there, you can show it to me, but it's not being talked about. It's not catching any traction. No. What is catching traction is saying, look, we don't want our tax dollars to go to putting money into putting forward this garbage. But he says the same thing the left states, the same thing they did with that Florida Don't Say Gay bill. He says the same things. They want to ban books. That's not liberty. It's very liberty to say that your tax dollars should not be spent on things, on social issues that you disagree with, to the left and to the right. They should not be spent in that way, putting your tax dollars forward to it. But of course, Adam says they're not for liberty. They want to ban books. We're not talking about having a book burning, Adam. We're talking about not carrying books marketed to kids that are about sexual fetishes and our tax dollars being spent on it. But he says that out. Then he continues on another leftist talking about a woman's ability to determine when they get pregnant. You can debate all the abortion stuff, but in the end, they don't even want to take birth controls. You can debate all the abortion stuff. Look at how soft he is on abortion there, too. You know what's sad? You know what's really sad about this kind of garbage? And this tells you exactly how all this looks. Kentucky Right to Life endorsed him in the 2022 primary. That's right. You're hearing this guy say, well, let's debate the abortion stuff. And, well, you know, the pills, maybe that's an issue. Now, I know he's talking about birth control pills. That's a separate issue. And I agree with him there. And we can debate that. But he says debate all the abortion stuff. No, we can't debate all the abortion stuff, Adam. And you're over here getting the Kentucky Right to Life endorsements. How messed up is it? Were you lying to them this whole time? No, of course not. Let's be honest here. As long as he voted yes on the bills publicly that came to the floor, and as long as he continued to make Kentucky Right to Life feel special, he was going to get their endorsement. It doesn't matter how he actually feels. It doesn't matter what he stands for. All that mattered is that when Kentucky Right to Life came in the room, he gave them the time of day. And then they would give it back. That was the payoff. That's always been the payoff with these endorsement groups like the NRA, like Right to Life, like all these. That is what they do. They're solitary issue in their one bills, but then they forward these charlatan Republicans because they make them feel special. I do not believe, and anybody from Right to Life can tell me, I do not believe if they knew that Adam Koenig actually believed these things, they would have endorsed him. But they did. Because, of course, Adam hid what he believed. Because he knew he couldn't get elected if he was honest about his beliefs. But then you had to wonder, why is it that we can't get abortion moving all these years until recently, until we've gotten more and more conservatives in there, despite Adam being in there for a very long time. And despite all these things, why couldn't we get it done? This is why. Because in their quest to say, well, you're making us feel special, they're endorsing people who actually are pushing back against their ultimate goal of no abortion. That's what Kentucky Right to Life is pushing for. And you have individuals like Adam who are against your end goal. Now, I understand the argument of saying, look, if you're a right to life group, and right now you've got people that are saying abortion at 30 weeks, and you're like, if we can get in enough people to support an abortion ban after 16 weeks, well, that's progress. And I'm with you, it is. But at some point, people you may have supported in the past to get your ban down to 16 weeks, and if you're trying to get it now down to 12 weeks or heartbeat or 6 weeks, you may have to leave them behind. They no longer are one of yours. That's a hard fact for a lot of people to accept. And it's clear Adam Koenig a long time ago stopped being one of Kentucky's right to life people, but they still kept endorsing him. He would have never said anything like that while he was actively still running for office. That's what you got to watch with these snakes. You got to watch what they do and say when they're not running for office. You got to try to dig back to see what they support and do when they weren't in office. But he doesn't just stop here. You know, Adam loses all sense of his ability to be self-aware in his next quote. Continue. But Koenig says the brashness of some of these candidates is highly marketable and profitable for people, especially with social media seizing on brief moments that can be liked or shared regardless of the truth. He said, I could have told people that Joe Biden is destroying your lives and I'm going to fight him. And that's a expletive is what the article says, but he says, I'm pretty sure he says the F word. And that's a effing lie because I don't have anything to do with Joe Biden. I can't fix inflation. Would you rather hear a comforting lie or an uncomfortable truth? This is so rich coming from anybody in the establishment because they prey upon these issues. Inflation, Joe Biden, crazy liberals fighting them in order to get you to continue buying their BS. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at one of Adam Koenig's 2022 campaigns. So this is the campaign. I'm going to play you one of his ads. This is from his last campaign that he lost, where he says he didn't run on inflation and gas prices. Let's take a look.
Inflation, gas prices, and attacks from liberals imposing radical views. We need a leader who has our back. A true conservative like Adam Koenig. He stood up to government overreach, stopping mandates, putting kids back in school, and saving girls' sports. Adam Koenig lowered personal income tax, voted for welfare reform to get people back to work, and voted to fund a new Brent Spence bridge with no tolls. In the Republican primary for state representative, vote Adam Koenig.
He literally, for those of you who couldn't see, I know you could hear him talk about it a bit, but for those of you who couldn't see, that video led off with inflation and gas prices. He ran on it too. He's so unaware. They lie to themselves to make themselves, because understand this. Nobody wants to be the villain in their own story. So they will lie and lie to themselves. And here he has actively and actually lied to himself about how he didn't run on that. Your ads featured it. That's the only ad I could find from 2022. And it started with it. And I guarantee you, Adam, if I was to go and look at the mail you sent out, and I guarantee you, and you know this too, for all of you voters out there that get the political stuff, your state level people will send this to you. They'll do things like say, we're going to fight illegal immigration. Adam, what are you going to do about illegal immigration in Kentucky? Now, there are some actual things I think the legislature could do to push back on illegal immigration. But Adam, come on. You've put that out there. You've said these things. Look at these things that he now says, oh, that's a lie. He was fine saying him when they were serving him because it's part of the game to them. They don't care about lying to you. Then he wonders why he doesn't have credibility. He tries to say uncomfortable truths do not sell right now, nor does competence or experience. Yeah, experience doesn't sell right now. You know why? Because you've led us down a terrible path. We're unhappy with where we are. It is people with your lack of actual experience. Because see, here's a very important experience I believe our elected officials need to have. You need to be, or have been, on the full brunt and receiving end of the regulations you so push for. You need to have been a victim of government. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm talking about a victim of the lockdowns. Your job, your life, you know people who've committed suicide, overdose, things like that. Those were victims of the government. You need to have been one to recognize that these policies you push forwards aren't all cookies and rainbows. You are taking somebody else's money, not yours. It's easy to be generous with someone else's money. You're taking somebody else's money and spending it on things you like. You need to have been an actual victim of it. But what is Adam's background before being in office, which he's been most of his life before he's representative, he held a local office? What is his background before that? Well, he's a realtor. Not saying it's not a real job. Realtor's a good job. Sales, important. But for anybody who works in realty would back me up on this. Let's be honest here. That is a job that exists a lot of times beyond government regulation. A lot of government regulation goes into selling property. And realtors exist to help you navigate through that. That's part of their main goal. Part of it is to show you houses and to understand the markets. And there's knowledge and everything that goes in there. Do not get me wrong. But a large part of the real estate process is going through all the paperwork. Government-induced paperwork. And so you've never worked in a position where you've owned a business or you've done something where you would be the victim of the government regulation if you are Adam Koenig in this place. Because, of course, even if you are in a position to be a victim of government regulation, which we all are, like I said, I'm not saying realtors aren't. They are also in the position to be victims of government regulation. I'm sure a lot of realtors listening to this could tell you that they can point to things that government has done. Things like playing with urban service boundaries. Things like playing with different zoning laws where they have personally experienced financial loss because of government. But the entire time while you're doing that, you're also in government. You are making excuses because once again, you can't be the villain in your own story. You can't do it. So you make excuses for it. And then when you're kicked out, you claim, well, I've got government experience, so I'm the only person who should be voted for. Only an experienced bureaucrat knows how to run government. Run our lives into the ground, you mean? Because look at Joe Biden's administration. The mean amount of time they've spent in private sector, 0 years. 0 years. His entire administration is made of lifelong bureaucrats and politicians. He himself was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, senators ever elected. Entire life. And before that, he was a county council member. So his entire life, pretty much, he's been an elected person. His career has been in politics. Joe Biden. And you wonder why they're incompetent? They never had a chance to get the competence that comes with, that you and me have, that comes with actually living our lives. But the only experience they care about is, well, have you been in government long enough? And then we wonder why it's all going downhill. In this article, Koenig also talks about things like, well, government's slow and that frustrates people because they want everything instantly. No, that's not what was frustrating people. What's frustrating is when we have a super duper 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 uber majority of Republicans in our state legislature, we can afford to lose a few. But we have a super duper majority, and yet we can't get done basic Republican things. Literally, being against mandates, the jabby jab mandates, okay? More Republicans agreed on being against government jab mandates than agree on the Second Amendment. It was a higher polling issue than that. I'm dead serious. There's few things that unite Republicans more than some of these issues. Just like Republicans are united against the transgender issues and the CRT issues. They're united on that. The social issues. But also they were united against mandates. But yet, what couldn't we get done? Couldn't get a law passed to stop it, could we? To stop government entities from being able to mandate it. Couldn't get it done. That's what people were frustrated about. We weren't frustrated over, well, government's too slow. I wouldn't be frustrated if we had a split house. We are frustrated at the state level because we have so many Republicans. And we're frustrated at the federal level because you don't do anything when you get into office. It's frustrating to see Democrats have no problem getting their agenda done. A constant march of leftist ideas, while the right can't do anything even when we have the power. Can't do anything. And so I focused on the Adam Koenig thing because I think that really shows you get an interesting look at an establishment Republican that's been kicked down on their butt and what they really think of you. We saw the same thing with Liz Cheney. What they really think of you. And what do they really think of us? They don't believe in anything we stand for. They parrot leftist talking points. I mean, ask yourself this. In 2020, our Republican super duper duper ooper majorities passed a bill creating a statutory committee called the Commission on Race and Equal Opportunity, believing that, because keep in mind, if you're to do that, you're asking government to do things. You want to create a private nonprofit that focuses on that? That's your thing. I disagree with it. I don't think it really exists, but this is government. So your tax dollars pay these legislators once a month to sit in this meeting and hear about, one, how racist everybody is and just don't know it. And then two, how our tax dollars should be taken from us and then spent on racial lines. Republicans created that. In 2020, with the pushback of the CRT that was there, with the pushback of all this, they still did it. They still voted for it. Because they bought into the lie that, and that's the thing, when you give an inch, you compromise everything. And you guys have just, and this is a message to elected people, you have just destroyed everything our system was supposed to stand for. You've just destroyed it. You take and you take. And you allow petty things like socially, do I like this individual representative or do I not, to stop you from doing what's right. A common talking point you'll hear from individuals, from people in politics, this is well known. People ask, why does Thomas Massie not get more things passed? It's because, and a response people say all the time is, well, it's because people don't like him personally, because he always votes no's on things, so they just don't like him, so he can't get things done. It doesn't matter whether or not you like somebody. It shouldn't matter what your principles are. But that's not what it is for them. It's a social club to them. That's what they care about. That's all it is to them, is a social club. And what's key is you're not in it. That's why they hate Trump so much. But they don't mind DeSantis. Despite the fact, I would say 99% of that is still the same. Their views are the same. Their policy prescriptions seem to be pretty similar. But the reason why they like him more is because he dotted the I's and crossed the T's. You know, he's in the military. Then he ran for lower office, higher office, higher office. Then he runs for president. He's running for higher office. He's following the process, the political process. Working your way up. I'm not shaming that. There's nothing wrong with that. I see nothing wrong with that. My point is that's why they like him. And it's okay for you to like him too for different reasons. Don't misunderstand, but you wonder, why is it that these establishment people are so okay with DeSantis when he believes a lot of the same things Trump does, and they're so against Trump? And it's because of that. He's followed that process. That's part of it. And the other part of it is because, well, frankly, do they really believe anything they stand for? I mean, they come out and they say things are wrong, but then there's no action. I mean, if you really believed that, as they say they do, that our intelligence community is colluding with mainstream media and social media to put out a lie that the Hunter Biden laptop story was false 30 days before an election, and then it turns out it's 100% true. That is illegal electioneering. People should go to jail for that. It should be considered treasonous behavior, really, by the intelligence communities. If they actively knew, it probably was true, but they just started saying it because, well, they didn't want Trump to win. Where's the accountability for the generals, outgoing generals that admitted that they're lying to Trump about troop status? Where are they not being brought up on charges? Treasonous, some may say. Where's that at? They're doing some investigations, I guess, into Biden now. That's good. But where's it at? Why didn't the state legislature impeach Bashir for using KSP to harass you for going to church? Why didn't they? Is it because a lot of them just don't simply actually believe anything they're saying? Of course not. See, they poll, and then they message on what polls well. It's why Adam is so unaware, as we covered in his little conversation. That's why he's so unaware of how he sounds. As you're literally saying you didn't do things you did. And as you're as you now are parroting leftist talking points. Because you're no longer having to run for office as a Republican. And anytime you have to wonder, why are things not getting done? That's why. So how do we hold them accountable? Well, guys, all we have right now is voting. And I know some of you don't trust our electoral system. I hear you. But at least you got to go out and you got to vote. But more importantly than that, you got to research who you're voting. But also at the same time, I'm going to be honest. The reason why those people continue to win is because they bring in more money, a lot more money. Because they're willing to play the game. Because they're willing to do what it takes to win. Because they don't actually care about what they do with the office. They just care about being in it. And they'll take money from anybody. If that means they get to send you one more piece of mail or do one more TV ad to make sure that they continue to hold their office where they will do nothing. Because they stopped standing for something a long, long time ago, if they ever did. Because it stopped being, and they have, like I said earlier, they have destroyed what our system is really supposed to be about. Absolutely destroyed it. And it's up to us. It's up to us. I mean, we have got to be smarter. We have got to be on top of it. We've got to stay informed. We got to be willing to step up. I mean, as I said in, I think, 2 podcasts ago, Democrat grassroots, they donate. Republican grassroots, they don't. Then they wonder why they keep getting cruddy politicians in office. Well, if you can only get money from lefty people, where do you think they're getting their money at? I don't know, just something to think about. But at the end of the day, it's just. And if you're an elected person, you're listening to this, I want you to look at yourself in a mirror and ask yourself, are you standing up for what? When you first ran, when you were idealistic, maybe, or when you first decided to be a conservative, are you really standing for what you originally said you would? Or have you allowed yourself to compromise away what you used to stand for? I know I never want to do that. The entire point of this is to make a difference. It's not to feed my ego. I don't care. I don't make money off this. And I tell you what, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. You get the urges to just say, you know what? I'm just going to go off and get as much away from everything I can, become as self-sustaining as I can. And it's just so I can try not to care as much as I can. But when you see something wrong, it's hard to not want to fight. Well, guys, that's what we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, you can visit C4KY.com, C4KY.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and have one great rest of the day.